Thank you, everybody, for attending the last breakout session of Experience 25. My name is Spencer Thomas. I'm a digital experience advisor with Medallia, presenting Orchestrating Seamless Cross-Channel Experiences with my co-presenter,
Kmett. I'm a customer experience advisor as well. Happy to be up on stage with Spencer.
Yeah, so we're going to jump into it. This one will be fairly interactive. We've got a lot of good stories to tell you guys about different things from our own personal cross-channel experiences and how it can apply to your brand. So excited to get into it. As we jump in, we're going to get into a little bit of why we're here. So go for it.
So one of the things that we always like to start out with to kind of set the tone here is the part around seamless omni-channel journeys and things like that is we have to acknowledge that when customers share their data with us, they're really saying, we want you to know me. So it's really important to really kind of hone in, like, this is our chance to deliver on this promise. They're giving us this gift of data about themselves. Why? Because they want us to know them. So that's part of the brand. It's just kind of part of that promise that we're trying to deliver on them. Super important.
Yeah. So we'll get into today's agenda here. So break it into 3 different sections. So first is defining what a seamless experience is. Kind of that gut feeling when you make every green light. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Keith will jump into creating cross-channel journey maps. So actually, how do we figure out what the optimal cross-channel experience should look like ahead of time? And then when you're working across channels, across teams, there's different ways to align across those teams, ways of working with those different teams. What can you go back on Monday, schedule some meetings with some various teams? What do we need to talk about? How do we align on goals? So we'll have some strategies for that. So as we dig into it here, first we're going to define what a seamless experience is. So we're going to start off with the textbook definition here. A seamless experience is a customer journey that is smooth, efficient, and enjoyable with no mistakes, delays, or setbacks. Okay, that's a fine definition, but to me it is that feeling that you have inside. Oh, that went really well. Oh, that was smooth. A couple weeks ago when I dropped both my boys off at daycare, it's fairly close, maybe a mile and a half. It took me 3 minutes. I literally made every green light. But it's all of those things that had to happen for that to happen. All the red lights had to happen on the other side. I had to be going just the right speed to make it through. And once I got there, you know, it wasn't like, oh wow, what a great experience that was. It was almost like, that's how it should always be. And so every time those types of experiences happen with a particular brand, even if it's your competitor's brand, that now raises the bar for customer expectations for those moments.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, there's a lot of experiences that we've all had where, and this is where sometimes when we're looking at feedback, we're looking for these people who are saying, like you just mentioned, like, hey, wow, oh my gosh, this was a great experience. Sometimes the absence of that, because it's just like, this should be the way it always should be. Sometimes we're actually maybe just trying to move from negative to neutral instead of just positive. So thinking about that and from how to translate it into insights is sometimes we're hearing about bad experiences, and if we remove that friction, sometimes we're going to hear nothing, and that's okay too. That's a success.
Yep. So we're going to start, fortunately, with some negative experiences. What does it feel like when a brand doesn't know you? Awkward, frustrating. Often you're repeating yourself over and over again. Well, I was just on your website and I have to explain what I was doing again to somebody in a call center. I think we've all been there. We've all done that. Personal story, I purchased a TV a couple years ago in a large freight box from a cheap deal app. And I opened the box and knew something was wrong immediately. The panel of the TV was separate from the screen, like it had fallen apart in the box. So I go online onto a digital experience, trying to print out a return slip. The return slip itself was more for a small box and envelope, not a freight delivery. So this item, again, was delivered on a larger truck, not something that I could just print off a slip for. When I called in, I explained this experience to somebody that had really no context about the US mail system or anything like that. And they explained, well, no, you should just go online. Here's the place to do it. This is probably what they were instructed to do from the call center side. Mm-hmm. You know, people are calling in about returns. You instruct them about this is the returns experience. I explained, no, that slip is not the slip it should be. What ended up happening was I put that slip on and just said, well, let's see. And somebody at USPS, a third party, was nice enough just to pick it up, brought it to their office, let me a handwritten note and said, hey, we took care of it, even though it was not something that they would normally pick up. It was outside their normal size. So I wasn't actually able to solve the issue with the company I was doing business with. They ended up sending me a refund because USPS, a person just went out of their way above me. I don't even know who they were, left a handwritten note, So that type of experience, I'm not doing business with that brand anymore. I bought a TV so they could just hand deliver it into my house, make sure that it was not broken in case it was. So poor experience. But when we consider these green light experiences, what about these? So attending a lot of sporting events, this is something I encounter quite a bit. You might go to a game, a concert, something like that, and the last thing you want to do is stand in line, waste time, waiting to get a drink, food, whatever that might be. So some data we collected cited from an Oracle study, 45% of people are going to abandon a long concession line without making a purchase. So what some stadiums and places have done is sought to improve this experience by connecting some digital meets real type experiences. So specifically incorporating these walkthrough type experiences where you can either scan your app, scan your ID, credit card, something like that, and you can literally walk in, grab a drink, leave, get back in your seat in 3 minutes. What that also does is it frees up the other lines for people that are just getting food, something that's a bit more, you might need more that one-on-one connection with somebody to fulfill that purchase. So it makes both your experience better, it makes other people's experiences better because you're improving that line efficiency. This type of thing, there's a number of other teams, the LA Clippers, the Cleveland Cavaliers, that have done similar type things, kind of building their fan experience starting with the digital experience first. Download the app. Your tickets are on the app. Your fan preferences are on the app. So now we know, you have little kids. You like coming to day games on weekends. Now we can market to you in that way. Hey, we have a game coming up. Hey, your favorite player is starting, something like that. You can have that more personalized type experience. You're also able to use that app to make purchases, to grab drinks. All of that sort of in-stadium experience is then made better by that digital experience, using an app for something useful, not just something that you're kind of endlessly scrolling through, using it more as a tool.
And just to interject a little bit there, Spencer, like what you're saying is I'm giving you more data. Now you know me. Mm-hmm. Now you're taking that, turning it into action, right? So, yep. And the simplest way to get that wrong, for example, I order shoes off of a shoe company. I bought the shoes, but then for the next 2 weeks, I see nothing but ads for the shoes I just bought. It's like, wow, that's super annoying. I see everybody nodding, yep. All you had to do was now start offering me socks, right? Like that's, it's like I bought shoes, give me socks. Yep. So like it's the simple things, but sometimes you're amazed at how fast we don't think about that connectedness.
Yep. So I believe during one of the keynotes yesterday, somebody mentioned a poor DMV experience. I have a positive DMV experience to tell you about, and it happened just last month. I went online first. It started with a digital experience. I set an appointment online for 9 a.m. on a Thursday, a day I was off work. I showed up at about 8:55, and the person, the clerk, got my name. Okay, great. We were expecting you. Let's stand over here. Did the vision test. She brings an iPad with her. Okay, I say all the letters, types in. Okay, please take a seat here. I'm anticipating 30 minutes or so to go by, just kind of doing nothing. 2 minutes later, I hear my number called. I also got a text simultaneously, maybe if I had my headphones in or if I was kind of wandering off, something like that. But they have this very streamlined in-person experience that started with that digital experience. So answered some questions with that guy, went to the next person, got my picture taken, got my temporary ID, was back in my car by 9 a.m., the time my appointment was supposed to start. To me, I sat down, I'm like, as a CX professional, I was thinking, that was an orchestrated experience. I'm plugging this into this presentation because I literally went out of my way to recommend my DMV experience to friends and family. So I was a walking NPS.
Go renew your driver's license.
Yeah.
Not in my state. It was 3 hours. I had to take half the day off, and then it was crazy.
Yeah, so I was like, hey guys, you've been to the DMV. If you need your picture taken, I'd recommend it. It's great. So yeah, state of Colorado, kind of got this buttoned up. Actually made something that could have been dreadful into something that was. All right.
You designed, maybe you orchestrated.
Yeah.
There's your feedback.
Yeah.
Keep up the good
Satisfied
work.
Customer.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, Keith, I'll let you take over here, go into some cross-channel journey mapping.
Yeah, so cross-channel journey mapping, everybody loves journey maps, right? Yes, I love journey maps. That's kind of my jam, actually. So just like Spencer was doing earlier, we just want to make sure everybody understands what the definition of a journey map is. I love Forrester's new definition here as that's a customer's path and perception as they pursue a goal. So one thing I'll just caveat here, because I can't help myself, is If you think it's, well, here's the journey everybody takes, you've already said that wrong. Like you've got your wording wrong, everything else. Everybody can't have the same goal. You need to really understand what goals do your customers have. That's the best way to understand how you're going to know them along that path, right? So that's a lot to keep in, and then understanding their perceptions, obviously. So I could spend all day just on this slide. Let's move forward. The customer's path, just like Spencer just described, right? He just talked about how a digital path moved into a physical path and what happened with that. And sometimes we forget this. We're guilty of it because we work, sadly, in silos a lot of times, right? What happens is we end up going, well, the digital team, this is a digital website, it's the digital experience. Well, wait, is it the digital experience? Spencer started on digital, but then he ended up in a physical, and the process was seamless. We've got to think and design journeys in that manner. We got to think about where they might leave the digital and what paths they might take. So it's really easy to forget that when we talk about journeys, don't just think about the channels, think about the real path your customers are going to take along their pursuit to that goal.
Some of these are happening simultaneously now.
Oh, yeah.
The consideration purchase when you're in a retail space, a physical store, a lot of these retail spaces have in-store mode. So you're both having the retail experience while there may also be a discovery happening, a recommendation happening, a promotion happening with the digital experience simultaneously. So we present this as linear, but often it can be squished, especially in that phase, happening at the same time. Sorry, go ahead.
It's a good call. It's a good call out, Spencer. Thank you. One McKinsey research did this, and I love this because I like to talk a lot about how we sometimes get really obsessed about measuring all the transactions. Hey, I'm going to measure everything along the journey, and then when I take up all the scores across the entire journey, I'm going to add them all up, and that's going to be like my predictive of how people interpret this journey. Sorry, that's wrong. So what are we learning from here? Here's a good example. I'll go quickly on this, but this onboarding journey that a media company did, it was spanned over 3 months. Wasn't always linear, as Spencer just called out, right? But in that journey, they had 9 phone calls, multiple emails, they had a home visit, all these things, right? What happens every time they call in? Oh, the agent was pleasant, my home visit was pleasant, 90% satisfaction the whole way along. You ask them about the entire journey, you got a 40%. What? How's that possible? Yeah, simple. You can't sum up all the interactions and hope that you're going to get a good score over the entire journey. Why? I didn't want 9 phone calls. I didn't want all the multiple emails, right? You didn't know me. It's like you went, it was not a green light experience. So super powerful here to remember, you can't just sum up all the call centers and all the other interactions and get a result that you were expecting. So as we were talking earlier, right, this is just another way, and we love, since most of us may have taken a flight recently, we thought we'd use some airline examples. And so, unlocking those seamless experiences, Spencer even called out some other green light experiences, right? We're seeing this evolution, even in the airline and different airlines. I'm sure we could all compare airline stories here. Some of these apps and bookings and everything else were all different ways of trying to get that green light experience. We've seen, innovation happening around, for the longest time, printed out boarding passes. I can't help but notice, I work with some airline industries, and I can't help but notice how many people will have printouts still. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing to me. And the reason I always think this is because I also go back to that operational efficiency. I'm like, print costs money. Sending you a digital ticket on your phone doesn't cost as much money to print out the paper, right? So I just can't help but look at the dollars and cents and financial linkage there. But as you can see here, there's other opportunities still that we've seen, right? Like if you checked your bag, you've got to go to find the belt and everything else. But then sometimes you get to the belt and you're waiting, right? And you have no idea. And what has Amazon and other things like those experiences, what's that taught us? We don't like to wait, is what it's taught us. And what's that mean? That means I want to know, just like you might see on Amazon or whatever, is it around the corner? Is it just around the corner, right? So why not enhance that to make that more of a green light experience? Things like that. And then also tying it back to loyalty. Sometimes you go through this journey, You think you're getting loyalty points, you're not sure. There's a lot of different things. But one other thing that Spencer and I really wanted to show was we worked with an airline who said, we want to understand and monitor, how do we monitor the health of the journey overall? Not just transactionally, but like overall, holistically, and kind of find those spots. And so what we did is we partnered with the professional services team of Medallia, obviously, and we worked together and worked with the client, and they created this dashboard, which actually exists today in everybody's instance, right? This is called a journey view module. And while I'm sure some of my product team friends here are like, wow, we've had that for a long time. Sometimes it takes a little bit of innovation, a little bit of different ways of looking at it to say, how might we do this different? How might we use it differently? The process to getting to this, and this is actual screenshot, but I'll just caveat this. I changed the numbers. I can't show their data, right? Let's just be careful here. But a lot of people have asked me this, even during this conference this week, is, hey, how do I kind of bring this together? How can I view this in Medallia in the dashboard? So this is how we did it. The one thing I can't show you, but it does exist, is on any one of these tiles, I can actually click and a side panel opens and it shows me all the text analytics and comments associated to that moment in the journey, and all with just the power of the filters. Now, how did they do it? Well, first of all, we didn't just go build it. We used a whiteboard, Post-it notes, try to figure out. So if you're thinking, I want this, great. If you want it, first do a prototype, map it out. Then you might realize, do I have all the data I need to do this? That was something we had to work on with them. But within 3 months, we were able to get all the data we needed, and here we have. Now I'm going to interact with you all and ask you, what pops out? Anything pop out in particular when you're looking at this data? If I have an on-time flight, I want to know what the experience of on-time looks like. If I have a delayed flight, I already know it's going to be more negative. So let's see how those two compare, right? So if you're looking at this and you can't boil the ocean, right? You have to pick where you're going to focus on. I'll call out that this team actually recognized something really interesting. So when they thought about their person, what's the goal that their persona is having, right? They're thinking about their business traveler, the higher end traveler, the person who's going to use a lot of their services over and over again. What they saw was the lounge experience. And in the lounge experience, it's not great even if it's on time. And then it gets way worse, obviously, because delayed flight means they're probably trying to find room in the lounges, right? Obviously, the rebooking experience in a delayed flight is going to be bad. But if you're a business traveler, that lounge experience is part of the reason you're in that executive club. So they actually saw this data and started saying, not only, because if you see the lounge, there's a ton of negative comments there that they can learn from and really kind of combine to say, how do we do this different? And now they're actually use this to help justify why they might expand the lounge area, have more of an executive VIP suite room for those types of clients, so that they're trying to make sure that they continue to win their business. Again, could spend all day on this slide, love it. And again, if talk to your professional services team if you want to have this. It's not, it's just something you have to really work on, but you definitely take the time to map it out. All right, Spencer, so we just showed everybody how to monitor it, but like you said, we've also got to get people aligned to working on some stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea here is going back to work on Monday. We're going to take a long weekend after this week here. What should we talk about? Who should we meet with? So first thing we should understand is why companies fail to connect these types of experiences. First, as we've alluded to thus far, is nobody owns the entire experience. You might have channel managers, product managers, but if we just measure each touch point and don't look at the holistic view, it doesn't add up to the full experience. So we need to gain alignment across the entire experience. Second, prioritization is difficult as well. Even if you get everybody in the same room agreeing, yes, we need to make sure that we have A, B, C across channels all lined up. Sometimes the next best action, there could be different opinions about that. One could cost more than another. There needs to be a way to prioritize these next best actions. In the world I live in digital, some next best actions, if you're having trouble online, could be a live chat, which could be personalized, but it could also just be something that somebody has to loop through again, or it could be a callback. both could solve the customer's issue. One could cost more, but we have to kind of prioritize what's important. Maybe you prioritize the callback for more of the VIP customers based on some data you know about them, and then prioritize the live chat for kind of the middle tier of customers. And then our frontline teams have limited access to the CX insights that they need. So I think about this in terms of like a digital purchase experience. So you might be purchasing something online in anticipation for a big trip coming up in a couple weeks. That's a digital experience. But then on the company that I'm transacting with, it's both a digital experience, a merchandising experience, and then it could end up being a contact center experience if something goes wrong. So what this represents is the initial excitement I have. I just bought some new ski equipment for a trip I have coming up. I get that confirmation email. All right, I'm getting excited about it. But then I haven't really heard anything. Some other companies will send me status updates about where my package is. I haven't seen anything yet. I'm getting a little bit worried. Another week goes by, getting a bit more worried. I'm not on the green path. And then I end up calling somebody. And that contact center's job is to move me from this angry face all the way back up to the green line. They're facing the brunt of that entire issue. And if I got maybe I have a conversation with somebody, maybe we figure it out, maybe not. I might get a survey afterwards. Well, what team then gets the negative score because of my negative experience? The contact center team. But it was a digital and merchandising issue. They were not aligned on how many items were in stock. I ended up purchasing something that was not in stock. Yeah, that's a big problem. And then again, it's the contact center that kind of faces the brunt of that experience when I have to call in. They have to solve it for me, move me back to the green path, or at least as close as they possibly can. In this case, nothing they could really do.
One of the things that Spencer's pointing out, right, is that you mentioned how customer experience, we're not a team that can tackle this all. And a lot of times you've always heard customer experience needs to break down silos. Well, what does that mean? How are you going to do it? The best way to do it, define what is the seamless journey you want to deliver, right? Really define it. Get business buy-in to this is the new seamless journey we want to deliver, and then organize around that journey. So use the journey to be the thing that helps you thread who should be involved, what parts of do they own, and really collaborate to improve along the way. Your journeys can really be used almost in a project management style. The way I always used them was, here's my future state, here's where we currently are, and I would literally give a percentage of how close we're moving towards the future state. And then here are some roadblocks. I know it sounds simple, but it really works and is effective. And it's sometimes better than a simple little status sheet that just says project's green or project's yellow. You really need to keep selling the story, because otherwise you don't break down the silos and you lose interest from all the people trying to help you move forward.
Yeah. I think we can take even some inspiration from what Will Guidara was speaking about yesterday, where it was, let's analyze every single customer touch point that we have. In this case, we don't want to put 190 things on the slide or whatever the number it was, but find some of those touch points and figure out which ones we can optimize. Figure out, okay, there's a seam there, there, and there. All right, we can fix that seam right there. Start somewhere.
Right. Well, and a lot of times we use text analytics and other data from our surveys to say, here are the top 5 detractor moments along the journey. Just start simple. Start somewhere. You identify 3 to 5, and then say, who around the organization? You always need to ask the question, is anybody already working on this problem? And then if nobody's working on it, okay, who can help? But I always learn from even my prior world and working in corporate is you need to sometimes ask, is anybody else already working on this? And make sure that you're not stepping on toes.
Yep.
Yeah, and here's a great example. The CX team with this client we worked with, they're a financial services firm, and the CX team used Medallia, and they started seeing this customer frustration in online payments. Wow, online payments driving up calls, just like Spencer mentioned, who's getting the brunt of this? The call center. Mm-hmm. And they call up IT and they're like, hey, we think there's something wrong with the website. IT says, nope, green lights, it's all good. So they're like, okay, maybe we need to ask the UX team to do a little research because, we need to go a little here. And I'll be honest, if this client wasn't using our digital experience suite, so they didn't have the behavioral analytics, but if they had that, they may have been able to find that. But they call up the UX team as well and the digital team, and they start to investigate. They see that the key action, somehow the redesign happened. And everybody knows this if you have any experience with this, basically that button to do their online payments and things got moved. and it got moved to a place where people weren't just seeing it naturally. So they thought, I don't know how to do this, because nobody scrolls, nobody reads online. Let's just face it. That's why there is a call center. And so what happens? Right? That costs money. Sorry. The UX team redesigns that interface. What they started to do is then this team really started to keep track of these types of experiences. And they said, let's keep track how much we're saving in the negative experiences we're preventing. You know, sometimes you have to do a little bit of how much did we actually prevent money going out the door? I've done this in my own career where it's like, hey, if we fix the login, my prior company, we were building an app, $4 million application behind the login. IT was going to change the login, make it harder to log in. I was like, wait, we're spending $4 million behind the login, but nobody's going to be able to log in anymore. How's that work? So if we change the login experience, we're ruining our $4 million investment and then wondering why people don't use it. And we would keep track of those types of stories. That's the kind of value too. It's not always, growth is great, but sometimes preventative financial ruin is also a good story to tell. You can all see the different metrics there.
So I mentioned previously, like identifying where the seams are. This is a pretty common one from the website. And we've been talking about website in a call center. It's been a pretty popular theme this week. But through some digital feedback data at Medallia's digital experience analytics, we noticed that the Contact Us page specifically had a high prevalence of low satisfaction, as indicated by surveys. And so we dug into our DXA platform to figure out what sort of frustration behaviors are happening here to then make it easier for somebody to receive a call. So in this case, they then got a callback, essentially allowing them to wait in a virtual hold. So you schedule the callback. The call center agent on the other side then has some context about what you're calling about, and then you can solve that issue. Again, it is sort of identifying something that, in this case, we're allowing them to call us. The expectation is if they're already on the Contact Us page, they're going to call us. So we're just going to make that experience a little bit easier, a little bit more seamless. Both makes the customer feel a little bit happier and makes it a bit easier for the employee on the other side. That point of entry is a bit easier. Hey, I see you're having some trouble. How can I help you? And then we can move on, hopefully save some time on those phone calls. Another interesting example here in the sporting goods retail space, some things that we know about customers. We observed that in this case, people shopping for golf equipment, golf clubs, things like that, were 2 times more likely to visit a store. It's something that you kind of need a feel for when you're purchasing. So what action that we took, we then added more personalized club fitting and swing session content onto those types of pages, which then resulted in better sales. Some additional things that we know about our customers, we observed a high cart abandonment rate for large physical items like workout equipment. So by changing some of the content around in-store pickup, optimizing the content, we were able to improve the conversion rate for this group of products from 25 to 46%. So again, it's just taking what you know about customers, making some change, in this case, something very easy, scalable, changing the website content, and then measuring some improvement after the fact.
Yeah. To kind of wrap up and do a little summary for y'all, right? What have we been talking about? First of all, that promise, right? If they give us their data, we need to know them. We need to really act and deliver on that promise of you've entrusted us with this data. Now we're going to know you and give you a better experience, a more green light experience, right? What are ways you can go back Monday? Hopefully you get a little break here, but map, prioritize key journeys, unless you're going back tonight, sorry. The map and prioritize key journeys, right? So this is a big one. My one suggestion here, when you're prioritizing key journeys, what does that mean? Go to where the money is, meaning that journey can't just be about, any random thing. Make sure that that journey really connects back to the business in some way. So understanding those journeys and then understanding where they're giving us that data to know them. Unifying signals. If you have all this different data in disparate places, it's going to be really hard to say, we know you, and therefore improve the experience overall. Bringing it together, listening, and bringing together, orchestrating that data, right? We have also Medallia experience orchestration that can help stitch together that data to help you understand, oh, I know Spencer better, and that DMV experience is going to be way better than what mine was. So, and then lastly, like Spencer was just going through, right? Aligning these teams to take action around it. So, sometimes you're like, hey, I want to do that. I want to get the teams aligned started, but then they're not sure what they're aligning around. I've seen this time and time again. It's like, let's start a group to look at this. But that group gets really, if you haven't done your homework, they're going to lose interest quick. They're going to think you're adding a lot of work to their plate when you're really just saying, I'm just asking you to do your job plus one, right? Just go a little bit further than what we're doing. But you really have to be organized. So that's why we're giving you this kind of a guide to help you move forward. And we have about 10 minutes or so for some Q&A, but we'd also love your feedback. Happy to change outfits next time, whatever you need, Spencer.
We did match. We're both
I'm glad he got my text.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But love some questions from the audience. We've got runners here to help.
So we've been talking about the customer and then obviously the employee. For those folks that actually have a third party in there where it's not just customer employee, but you might have an independent sales approach.
Sure.
Any use cases where you've got that third angle, like we got a triangle and not just like a linear line?
Yeah, the B2B to C type of approach, yes. So I spent about 10 years in B2B, so I know exactly what you're talking about. So my strategy around that was always, instead of worrying, at first I got obsessed about the B2B part, but then I realized a good strategic way of approaching that is actually going to a strategic partner, so in one of your businesses that you kind of can trust, and say, let's do this exercise together to understand how you serve your customer. We'll learn together, but how can I empower your business to be successful to your customer? We like to get obsessed with this, we got to have that relationship with this other business. They don't care if you don't care about their end customer and their end goals, right? So I use this as an approach. The relationships we had with key businesses, I mapped out their customer journeys and then said, let's work together on how to build a seamless journey for your customer together. And guess what? Relationship score, I'd never gotten a 95 before by that company. But yeah, it was like, okay, I don't think they're going anywhere. Why? I cared more about their business than the relationship part of our business to their business. Sorry, I get passionate about that. I think I saw another hand over here first.
Would love some suggestions or feedback for when you're at that whiteboard preparing to map out your journey.
Sure.
In the airline scenario, it's very linear, right? You know a customer's going to do this before they get to the next point. Where I'm coming from, a customer could start at A, or they could somehow hop into C, or they could come into B, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And customers are popping all over the place, and it gets really overwhelming really quickly to be like, holy cow, what is the customer journey? So
I've been there too. Yeah, right. Don't assume that your homepage is the first thing they find on Google. Rule number one, you have to remember, search doesn't always take you to the homepage. So totally been there, done that. The way I always did it was and sorry, Spencer, I'm just jumping in, but you can talk digital all day long too. But the way I always organized was 80-20 rule. You can see a broader volume of flow going down there. And this is where it's really important that you understand who you're targeting, like who that person is, or like what segment, and does the business care about that segment? Or are there outliers that they care about more because they're the ones who maybe spend more or do things. And so having that linkage back to the business, but this is where sometimes volume does that kind of, and again, don't boil the ocean. And Spencer, I think I think what you were talking about with DXA, can help you identify those.
Yeah, so what happens often is I work with customers that turn on DXA. We'll ask these questions. What's the optimal journey? What do we want to set up? What's your conversion goal? And it then becomes a push-pull. They're like, well, that's why we got the platform. Okay, so then when you turn it on, what do you do then to figure out what is that 80 versus the 20? Specifically, you would go into something like funnels, or you would go into there's this auto-generated journey view that shows this is how many people went down this path, and this is how many people went down that path. Hopefully it's as clean as 80-20, but it might be 40-40-20, like, or 10, 10, 10, 10, like, and so you just are like, well, at least we have 10 groups of 10.
Right.
That's something. But yeah, so that's okay, we turned it on. Now we have at least a thread to pull on.
Right.
When I would do work in the digital space, that's where we would start.
And the way we visualize that, just to add one more, I just recently did one where we have the persona, but we saw that a group of people would buy 10 key products and then they would go down that kind of path. So we still had key journeys, but we kind of noticed that, hey, here's these group of products turn into a problem for the call center. So people who are buying these products are kind of going into this having detractor moments more frequently than the rest. And that became the journey that we're going to focus on tracking their delivery, for example.
You recommended journey mapping. When do you recommend journey mapping versus journey analytics and automating the gathering of the true journeys versus the desired view of mapping?
Right. So there is definitely two different ways of journey mapping, right? You can build it data-driven journeys and then also just doing journey mapping exercises. This is where it depends on the maturity of your organization, right? If you have a bunch of data and a bunch of disparate systems and, I look up Nicholas and I find 8 different versions of the Nicholas, getting to the data-driven journey is probably going to take you a lot longer than maybe just doing the more traditional mapping. So this is kind of where, where's your data at? What's the quality of your data? Ooh, I know data is a 4-letter word. It's a bad one, but you can turn it into good things, but you have to have quality.
Are you able to connect the dots between, say, DXA and the call center so that when the call comes in, that rep can see, oh, I see you've spent the last 10 minutes on the website and you seem to be struggling with X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, so that specific callback that I showed in the background also has a mechanism to say past DXA session along with some of the score data and all of that. So that is just with that mechanism, but there's also APIs and things like this that could pass that type of information to those users. So that is for like the individual specific user. The thing you have to consider too is that frontline trained and armed to be able to take action upon that. So, there's that element you would have to consider as well. There's the training and enablement. So you could think of, show me this one specific customer, or just give me a daily report of what types of issues people are facing so that they know more at large. So it's really kind of a training and enablement question, technically very feasible, but it's about, again, do they know what to do once they have it?
And as a former client of Medallia before I came to Medallia and working heavily in the contact center, all that and that strategy of don't give me more screens, get the data to where they're at, right? Thinking about those integrations, that's what Medallia does super well. We integrate with your tech stack. It's not just this thing off to the side. How do we be a part of that tech stack? So yes, you can do it, but I'd also think about that strategy of how do we meet it where the agent, like Spencer just said, like meet them where they're at.
Do you have an example where you did a journey mapping for a customer persona and then an employee persona and overlaid those and saw some converging or diverging points?
Oh yeah, I remember doing a journey map for a client where we discovered that the amount of effort the employee had to do to make, so it was like this, the employee sentiment and frustration and everything was dipping into the bottom of the graph. Meanwhile, the customer's like ecstatic, happy. But we're like, okay, and they were like, well, great, the customer's happy, move on. And we're like, whoa. What that's telling us is this is an unsustainable business model. You're gonna burn people out. And I'm like, what's your attrition here? And they're like 110%. I was like, oh, really? No duh. But it was kind of they almost needed to see the visual to say, oh, wow, yeah, wow. And so it was like, so we don't need to fix the customer experience. We need to how do we make the employee experience a little more seamless but then always saying, if we do this, will it affect that outcome of that customer? Because now we already know the customer, we've set an expectation here. How do you not move that expectation, but yet improve the experience for your employee? So it's a great way of sometimes illustrating that. How are we doing?
Awesome.
Oh,
I think we're right
we're
at time. So thank you,
We
everybody.
made it through it.
And,
Give us out.